Good morning, everyone, and welcome back. I hope you really enjoyed last night. It was a pity that the lights didn't dim so that you were able to see Circus Alba with their true glory of all of their light show, which if you were at the COP Fringe event, you may have seen. They were fantastic. Anyway, you're welcome to what is now the third Entrepreneurship workshop. The topic of today is community building and hiring. So all things community. One of the things that we discussed yesterday was whether open source, open distribution was just a distribution strategy, and I think we agreed that was one thing that it was, but we also had a bit of a discussion about the fact that the engagements with the community can often lead to really great hires because you are engaging with people, or people are engaging with your project. They're excited about your project, and you can identify some added value that they can bring. So we might continue those sorts of conversations. For anyone who's not been in this room thus far, I'll introduce myself first of all. My name is Eleanor Shaw. I am a Professor of Entrepreneurship at Strathclyde Business School, which is the UK's first technological university. So we, as you could imagine, are very interested in all things technical, and I'm particularly interested in the interface between emerging technologies and entrepreneurial mindsets and behaviours, because often it's the entrepreneurial mindset and behaviour that is able to, wants to, passionate, driven to engage with innovations and drive technologies and engage in the process of creative destruction, getting rid of the old and bringing in new, and often bringing in new for very good purposes. So I'll be a co-host of this panel. I'd like to introduce you to the co-pilot, Matt. Matt, do you want to just say a few words?
Yep, thank you very much, Ellen, and good morning, everybody. I'm Matt Barker. I'm co-founder and president of JetStack, which is a company that I started around Kubernetes about 8-9 years ago now. My entire career has been in open source software companies, basically. I think I started actually with Amanda at Canonical back in, for me, 2006, where I was in sales originally, but was really interested in the engineers, what the engineers were doing. I looked at their sort of terminals and was like, what the hell is that and what they're doing? But what really fascinated me was the impact of the work and how that actually landed inside organizations, and was lucky enough to see a very early development of LXC, which became Docker. And after a stint at MongoDB, where I was one of the early employees there, I left off the back of that when I saw the open sourcing of Kubernetes to create JetStack, created a services company, built that in the process, created a number of open source projects, one which became the de facto standard of the Kubernetes ecosystem, and then we were acquired a few years ago. I help with Open UK as entrepreneur in residence, and that's where I'm trying to help foster, encourage, and mentor startups in the open source space. And a large part of what we need to do is educate the UK on open source and starting businesses. And so these sorts of sessions are really to try and help to achieve that. Looking forward to the discussion today. I've been through a lot of these issues myself, the ones that we've been tackling yesterday and today. Community is a big part of what we do at JetStack, so I'm looking forward to some interesting discussion. We do have a Slido. I don't know if someone can put up the Slido link. So I have access to the Slido sort of responses. So if anyone has got any questions that they want to ask or any comments in that, then I'll see those and I can add them as part of the panel discussion. But looking forward to a great session.
Thank you. Can we put it back to the speaker slide, please? Thank you, great. Can I now introduce you to Amandine, who is the co-founder and guardian at Matrix. Hi, Amandine.
Good morning, thank you for having me. So yes, I'm a co-founder and guardian for Matrix being a decentralized, secure, open standard for communication, trying to break the fragmentation of communication and bring an open layer to the web just for real-time comms. I'm also COO and co-founder of Element, which is the company which builds on top of Matrix, hires the core team of Matrix. So a lot of the topics we'll be talking about are very relevant to us.
Thanks, Amandine. And Ron, can we go over to yourself now, please?
Yeah, definitely. Hi, everyone. I'm Ron. I'm CEO and co-founder of Phlox, as well as board member and treasurer of the NixOS Foundation. We've been around for about 20 years in a month, but we're just getting started. So a lot of these topics are really in the mix of what we're thinking about today.
And you have some of your community with you today.
Yeah,
I can see.
we have we have a bunch of the community folks, the folks that organized NixCon. So it's
Can I
okay.
also just give a congratulations as well to Ron, who, as of yesterday, raised?
Yeah. So yesterday we announced our Series A round. We closed 27 million in total funding. Thank you.
I can see why you're excited.
And we made Phlox open source. So Phlox is kind of a layer that is bringing Nix to more developers and teams, and we are totally doubling down on making it open source as well and starting to contribute back. So
Congratulations.
Thank you. Congratulations. Great to hear. Frank, can we go to you now, please?
Thanks a lot. My name is Frank Karliczek. I'm doing open source for a long time, 25 years, in different projects, in different roles. Was, for example, deeply involved in the KDE community for quite some time. Was vice president of KDE EV and other things. Then I founded a bunch of projects and companies myself. For example, one based in the US with American VCs in it. Nowadays, I'm founder and CEO of Nextcloud, where I'm actually proud that we didn't raise any money. It's all just bootstrapped of the core team itself. Yeah, independent, have no venture capital, nothing in the organization. Still growing fast. Company is about like 90 people at the moment. We're in a very big open source community with over 2,000 contributors on GitHub to the core itself, plus the ecosystem. And really happy to be here today.
Thank you, Frank, and glad to have you here with us on the panel. Now, just to confuse me, because I'm dyslexic, so having a Frank and a Franz next to one another is never going to be easy for me, but Franz, welcome to the panel. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. Thank you, and thanks for having me. So my name is Franz Karlsberger. I'm the CEO of Amaze.io. Amaze.io is the initiator of the open source project Lagoon, which is an application delivery platform, and was actually born out of the necessity of our mother company, which was Amaze Labs. So they were looking for a platform allowing their developers really to deploy modern applications on a containerized infrastructure. And as we were coming out of the open source Drupal ecosystem, it was very natural for us that we are also open sourcing our application delivery platform. And we have been bootstrapped, but in the meanwhile actually got acquired. So we got acquired by Marantis, which is also a big contributor in the open source industry. And jointly we're actually now following that path, providing a zero-ops application delivery platform for our use.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. So guys, the way this will work, we will have a fairly informal but lively conversation, I'm sure. And as things get warmed up, then please just, if you want to ask any questions, pop your hand up. We've got a couple of people with mics that are roving around. There we go. Thank you. Yep, there's both sides of the room. So our lovely roving mic assistants will come to you and ask questions. If we get to a point where no questions have been asked, we will then open it up to that part of the workshop. So Matt, over to you for the opening remarks.
I thought I'd kick it off just by asking the panel a bit about what's unique about an open source community. Obviously, communities of users aren't particularly unique, but obviously, I know open source ones are. Would anyone like to talk a little bit about what they think makes unique?
Yeah, definitely. So I have like the retrospective out in California. I also run one of the largest Israeli tech nonprofits, so very different type of community, other than the NixOS Foundation. And at least from my perspective, what I've seen is that open source communities have been one of the more passionate, I think, bunch. I think what's unique to me about open source technology communities is that it's completely unbiased, right? So if it's a strong technology, if it's something that people believe in, they'll come. So you kind of have this starting point where everyone that's there contributing or coming to events are already, fully bought in, passionate, and contributing. it just makes it a much stronger and lively and supportive, I guess, group of folks.
So you think passion?
Yeah.
Frank?
I think it's very important to differentiate a little bit because there are lots of different types of communities. I'm sure if you ask some proprietary companies, they will say that their customers are a community. But that's not what I personally mean. I understand as community. For me, a community are contributors that are really doing something, contributing to the project. In the past, it was mostly writing code, but of course, there are other ways to contribute. For example, Nextcloud is translated in like 90 languages, including Klingon. And this is done by contributors from all over the world as volunteers. And there, of course, there are other people who run marketing activities. For example, lately I was in Los Angeles at a conference called Scale. I gave a talk there. I just walked into the event and then I saw, oh, well, there's an Nextcloud booth here. Interesting. So I didn't even know. So we have community people who run like booths at events without even talking to the company. So I think this is an example of a great contributor community.
So for you, Frank, it's contributions. And Franz, how about for yourself?
Yeah, I echo very much what I've heard here already. So it's all about there's this common goal and this passion about to accomplish something. So there's a business pain out there, and as similar to Frank said, it's about the contributors who want to solve that. Mm-hmm. And if you build that on that momentum and give transparency, I think that is very important in building a community. You need to be very transparent. You need to be, what is the goal? What do you want to accomplish? And then build, the people themselves will then contribute and will join that momentum. So that's what we are seeing.
Interesting.
Yeah, I agree. It's a community of users is just around sharing experience, whilst a proper open source community is about bringing the project together, moving it forward, bringing visibility to it, attracting new people, getting them interested into it. And it's also keeping the companies building on top of it and the leads of the project really honest, because there is no filter and you just get it straight. If you make one mistake, you hear about it. So, and it's a really interesting situation to be in, to have this kind of interaction of like, if I do that, what's going to happen? Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's really the passion and the engagement. We have the same experience of community meetups popping up, and we find out after they happen, it's like, whoa, okay, cool. It has a life on its own now.
So we've heard passion, engagement, contribution. If that's the case, how do you actually foster and build a community? What do you actually do?
So when we started the project, and when you start from scratch, it's really tough because you have to get it right from the beginning. The first thing we've done is really engagement. Mm-hmm. So make sure that we had people always available to talk to the community, making sure we were transparent about what we were doing, being clear on the mission, and that there was not this wall between the core team who created the thing and the people contributing. The biggest risk is have this them versus us situation. So it's about openness, being welcoming, also making sure that the vibe is good, like making sure you clear out people who are bringing bad inputs and being nasty.
So it sounds like you need to create democracy and a good vibe.
Yeah.
Any comment from this side?
Yeah, very much agree. I think for us, fostering the community, there's two ends to it, right? There's the current community, which for us, it's all about, I think, continuing on what was said. It's making it open, making it fun, collaborative, making sure that we unblock anything that gets blocked. While also there's the other part about like how do we bring in and grow the community, right? So that in some ways, like how do we work together as a community to understand what others, outside would be interested in, to be able to kind of communicate that to them, and what do they need to have like an easier way into our group, and that's.
Yeah, transparency and openness is the key. If you're a volunteer, I mean, no one really wants to work or help like a big evil company. I mean, why should they? You really want to be, as a volunteer, you want to feel that you're part of it. And for that, you need to be able to be involved in all the discussions. that you have all the, I don't know, bug reports and feature planning and the code, obviously, everything in the open, so that people can have a look and say, okay, well, there are people doing this and this, I can do the same, I can be part of it, I can help. There should be no, like, I don't know, secret conference calls where the community is not invited and important decisions are made, something like that. That's, of course, a killer for the motivation of the community. So being really open and welcoming is the key. In Nextcloud, for example, if you want to get a feature or some code change in, the process is exactly the same if the change is done by an employee than from a community person. It's just exactly the same. We have a certain process with some tests needs to run, there needs to be a peer review, it needs to be, I don't know, security, usability need to be checked, but it's really the same if it's like a community person or an employee. Very often an employee proposes a code change and it is reviewed and approved by a community member. So it's really the same.
What got us started at the beginning was that there's also some structure. So we had community hours, making sure that they are well known, they are understood when they're happening, making sure as we are operating globally that everybody can participate. So we get different type of time slots. Everything was recorded, everything was documented. Going back again to you need to give that transparency back because you don't want to fall into that trap where okay, there's a hidden agenda by someone, as Frank basically pointed out. And we had then even people who are really trying to moderate this, to document this, and making sure that we give that visibility, which is basically happening from the core team, also to the community which we are building.
Okay, interesting.
I want to add, for us, that's like a core part, and we've seen that tension, right, where the community layer, anything that is supporting the community for the developers, right, like everything inside of it needs to be fully transparent. And no matter if you're a company, an individual, organizational providing services around the open source, like when it comes to that community layer, everything is kind of like kumbaya, right? We're all in it, working together on it.
Okay. Can I ask a question? Because I'm picking up, I get that it's kumbaya and it's inclusive, but there will be challenging behaviors. So I'm interested in when you're trying to create an open, inclusive community that's engaged, that's passionate, but you might have a individual or a group of individuals that are challenging. How do you manage that?
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, you can minimize that if you just establish a very nice atmosphere, nice spirit, just nice people who communicate nicely. Then people who don't communicate nicely are usually not really, they go away. But it sometimes happens, it's true. You need a code of conduct where you can basically say, look, these are the rules, this is how we work together here, respectfully, and this is how we communicate. And there are some then cases, I mean, in the history of Nextcloud, I think it only happens once or twice, where we then really basically had to remove someone.
Yeah. Okay.
But this should really be the last step, basically. If the community is really like nicely and inclusive and just is with good people, then we can deal with bad communication, usually very good.
Okay, any other?
Yeah, you set the right basis, and then when something happens, you have to react quickly and basically show that you are here and making sure that the spirit stays what it is and not let it fly, because if you don't try to address the problem quickly, then people will lose trust and it's just going to creep in.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll add that I think it's a very fine line between keeping the community very open, especially as like a foundation, while also empowering and kind of setting the structure and pushing away bad actors. So for us, I think we've had cases of this, but I think it's just about to the point of like react as quickly as possible. Like we don't have a code of conduct beyond don't be an asshole. Very broad. Probably we need to fine tune it a bit.
I think that's
we'll
pretty
sit
clear.
with some of the longer, the communities I've thought of it longer. But it is that fine line where we've had cases, and it's about like, okay, let's sit down, let's get back on the same page, and let's like shift away from conflict, keep it open, and
Yeah. Okay.
I think to some of the people in the audience who are maybe thinking about starting a company, dealing with bad actors in a community sounds like quite a lot of work. And obviously it's you've got to have a code of conduct. You've got to sort of like develop the community, you've got to create a culture, when actually you might just be thinking about just trying to sell your product and trying to get commercial success. What's the benefit of a community? I mean, obviously we're here in Entrepreneurship talking about creating an open source business, but for a potential founder, why should you even try and develop this community? What do you actually get out of it?
First of all, I think getting a code of conduct, that's the easiest part of running a company.
I'll take that.
Really,
We're going to sit down later.
I think there are a lot of bigger challenges than that, in my opinion. So I mean, if you want to start a company, then you have some challenges. You have no money, no product, no team, no customers, nothing, and no resources. And like being an open source company with an open source community can really help in some aspects. Like it starts from product development, where if you develop your product in the open, in my experience, it will be a lot better than if you just do it behind closed doors with, like, I don't know, 2 product managers thinking about a great idea they had last night. And I think it's the best thing ever. But as an open source community and company, you really always have the reality check, if really people like it or not, if they want to have it differently. Then, of course, it can have a huge benefit in marketing. For example, at Nextcloud, we only handle inbound leads. So basically, every customer we have comes to us because they already know about it because of the community, because they use it like at home, and their Raspberry Pi, and they like it. Oh, that's a great product. And then later, if their company is looking for a solution, then they recommend a product they use at home. That's an awesome marketing tool for free, basically. Well, not completely for free, because we have to make sure that you have a community. But then the marketing effect can be really, really good. And there's lots more benefits. For example, Nextcloud is also used in environments where code auditing is very important. It's high security environments, and they have being in the open, basically have the code peer reviewed by millions of people. It's very important, and I can go on and on. I think we also have the hiring. I think there are lots of benefits to doing an open source company.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
So I think agreed. And beyond that, for us, I think maybe we might be in a unique position, but in general, I feel like the future is open source native in some way. I think that software is becoming complex every single day. It's an order n problem. And we've been kind of throwing an order one solution at it, especially from the closed source aspect, where another engineer, maybe another engineering manager. And now we're getting to the extent where it's stopping to work, right? So it's like, for us, Nix Packages has over 80,000 packages, fully supported by over 5,000 community members. Like, there's no company that can do that. And that can only be done by like a vibrant and supported community that wants to do this. So I think that's another one. Other than it's just freaking awesome. Like we have people who buy everyone beers consistently whenever we meet. So
yeah, basically, if you don't have the community, it's just like a closed company which happened to have put its software open source, and that's it. On the plus side, it's visible. You can audit it. Yay. But as Frank says, in terms of dynamic, for the tech validation, the keeping honest side of things, and yes, the marketing and visibility and the passion around it, same thing. Like, we did hire some sales guys in the end, but it took us 3 years. And all the biggest customers definitely are the ones who have been in the community. And basically, then you have the first call with the customer, and you can see one guy sitting on the back with a Matrix hoodie, and you know it's one, because this is the guy who doesn't necessarily have the cash and the budget, but that's the person that people trust in the company. So if this guy says that this is a good technical product, like they will trust him.
Same here. When we started, basically, the application delivery platform, yes, it was an idea of a couple of folks within the company, but then by the fact that we open sourced it, it really accelerated also our product development, and really we accelerated the path, the roadmap, basically, for us. And as when everything is, of course, coming in, and also those requests which are coming from our customers, we are immediately feeding this back. So it's always going into the full open source version. And as Amandine said, we also have those champions within our customers. So I think they are the ones, they're maybe not the ones with the big budgets, but they are the ones who are influencing. And we even had later customers who moved on to us now and being part of our company. So closing now the loop onto hiring, we actually got from our customers the champion, moved them over because they were fully bought into the story of open source and also saw, okay, what we implemented for them, basically, it was fed back to them. And I think that was a huge level for us.
Interesting.
I'll add one note from yesterday's launch. So we got on the first page of Hacker News. Right, and there was a moment Tom and me and the team were like flushed out because we've been on 3 hours of collective sleep. And someone asked a really good question, right? Because we were pretty much going on Hacker News saying, Flux launched, Nix is awesome, you got to use it. And then someone asked like a common question for Nix. It's like, Nix and containers, why the hell should I move off containers, or like what's the difference? And Tom was writing like this really solid response, and we were all on Spatial kind of discussing it, and then someone was like, oh, someone responded. Is this someone from the team? Yeah. It's not. It's a community member. And it was a really good response.
The point when the community starts to self-manage itself is really nice. Another point is maybe a bit what you were saying, Franz. It's about them. Basically, in the end, it's a good way of getting your product tested and make sure that it's really strong and it works well.
I think some of the potential founders in the audience, I'm hearing great stuff about the community. And obviously, with an open source project, it helps you to incubate products. It helps you maybe to look at finding new hires. One of the things that I do hear from founders is worrying a little bit about the conflict of interest between a community user that might be only wanting to use the open source version of a product, but maybe isn't looking to pay for features. And so obviously knowing that a company is behind an open source project and is helping to almost further and grow that community, is there a point at which there is a conflict of interest between the community user and the company that's actually trying to monetize that community? And sort of what are the dynamics around that? That would be an interesting topic to explore if someone would like to.
Yeah, I have very strong opinions about that. So I think you implied in your question that there is an open source version and an enterprise version, and you need to pay for certain features. I think this is a mistake in the first place. Because then you have exactly this kind of conflict of interest. And you have people who are like, I want to have this feature, but it's only in the enterprise edition, which is not really open source. And then people start to develop the features in the enterprise edition, also in the community edition. Then you have to reject contributors, basically. And yet this is a whole mess, and I think this is a big problem, and this is the wrong path in the first place. I think you should have like one version, which is open source. And you should make your money not by selling features or proprietary software licenses, but other services around it, like support, subscription, stuff like that. The Red Hat, the SUSE.
But that is an opinion.
That's my opinion.
Yeah,
sorry,
people might disagree with you.
But I think that's fine. But that's like our position in the next slot.
That's and actually interesting. It's the way we have decided to approach it as well. But does anyone else have any other opinions or views on that?
Not really, because that's our business model as well. So we have an open source solution out there. We are not developing special features for enterprises. Basically, everything goes back into the open source version, and we build services around that. So it's based on a subscription. It's depending on how many clusters we need to manage. But in the end, it's no matter if this is if someone runs the open source version, it's the same one we are using for a customer who's actually asking us that we manage it on behalf for him.
And when you say services, that is literally like hourly rates, or is that services as in software as a service or proprietary features?
It's a platform as a service, and we are not doing hourly rates in that regard. It's really about it's a recurring revenue based on the size of the clusters we need to manage on behalf of the customer. And on top, we provide, it's included support, the entire maintenance, the entire monitoring.
So that there is no proprietary feature that someone's paying for us? Okay. And where do you see yourself going?
Yeah, we're super early, so I have a lot to learn from the folks here on the panel. I think.
But you've got to be doing something with that $27 million.
Yeah, you got to be doing something. For us, I think it's very obvious. Like, right, Nix is Nix. Flux we just launched, fully open source, the entire CLI and all the features of it. So it's like I feel like we're leaning towards just like having all of that in the open. And I think kind of in the future, right, we're going to be working with these enterprises to understand better, right, what kind of services do you need that we can sell, and you know, the things that the community want are in open source in Flux or open source in Nix, and we of course also have like the whole aspect of Nix packages and security of Nix packages, which is like 100% upstream from whatever we need to into it. So.
Yeah, for us it's a very topical topic, and I guess it comes along the revenue generation panel this afternoon as well. Yeah. But it's where to start. So the way we look at it, so first thing, if you look at your community saying, how can I make money from it, then you're probably going to shoot yourself in the foot. Yep. Your community is here to build a product, to make it progress, and then you have your customers. Your community may sprout some customers, but they're not necessarily your customers. For us, they're not necessarily our customers. So, and I really truly believe that if you talk to people in your community with an angle of a salesperson saying, how can am I going to extract money from these guys? You're really not going to go much further. In terms of service versus proprietary software, so building communication systems, we really went with the fact that the open source version should be able to grow the network. So it should be providing enough features that it's usable without any proprietary software. Then there are cases where you need extra security, you need specific features because you're a government or you're an enterprise. And this is where we took the position as Element to say, okay, if you really need this very secure border gateway to connect your private network to to the public network, surely you're someone who have the money and you can pay for it. But anyone out there can run whatever they want to the level of size they want without needing these proprietary things. So we're doing a bit of a balance. We started pure SaaS. Turns out that when you have sovereign communication, people want to run it on-premise, which makes sense. So yeah, it's we do a mix of both.
Interesting. So it does sound like there is a sort of balance that you have to play, and you could run the risk of sort of falling out with your community if you push it too far.
Yeah, the other thing is if you are looking at doing some proprietary features which are really useful, well, the community will just go and build them. So that's why basically determining what is proprietary and what is open source is an interesting discussion, and it happens constantly within our company. Yeah. But basically, if it's really useful, is it worth doing it proprietary? They will just do it.
Yeah.
So.
That's exactly, by the way, like the general assumption that we have. If it's something the community needs or wants, and we have it, that's for the community, that's open completely, and there's no question about it. Like the last thing is, the community, like we said earlier, we're part of it, and
I think there is a little bit of a difference between maybe being bootstrapped and taking a longer term view rather than taking VC and sort of building a product from scratch. I mean, I'm also a bootstrapped company. I felt like a huge sense of responsibility for the community that almost made our business successful. So we almost built our business around the needs of the community over the years. Whereas I've been in other companies where they were heavily VC backed, and they were just there to do all the contributions themselves, build a product around it, and effectively the open source was just a distribution model. So a community that kind of built themselves around that was more of just a way for them to maybe just find customers. So maybe there's a slightly difference in the way that companies are set up and how they're backed that might lead to slightly different outcomes around what happens with the community that supports them.
Yeah.
So for us, like it's kind of different because Nix is a community that's been around for 20 years, right?
Yeah.
So it's like for us, we're kind of coming in and trying on the Nix side to empower and grow it. And then, of course, on the Flock side, we're trying to bring more people in. Like the general philosophy, I think, right now is we are maybe 100,000 engineers sitting on the world's largest package manager. And our key goal is how do we grow this, right? So it's like, we spend days of the week just on Nix itself and helping it. And what was nice, I think, is maybe kind of like, I was lucky, but I think our backers, at least I was very factual about what we're planning to do, right? And very transparent.
Well.
So
yeah, that's good.
Can I ask a question about the diversity of the community? What are the demographics like? I mean, I don't know if you hold data on that or not, or because I'm interested in different perspectives, different points of view, because that's what you would want to start up, grow and develop your business.
Or getting data from the community is tough enough to get it from your own company employees. The community is difficult. We can say on our side it's pretty diverse physically, like people are from many different places. I don't know how you would qualify it. Basically, it's I don't know. It's hard to describe.
We started running like a Nix community survey once a year. And I was surprised by the amount of responses. We ended up getting like 2,000 responses for the last one. Nix is very Europe-centric at the moment. I think like a good portion of it is there, then US, and then we have like everyone else around the world. Our Matrix is being used as a main communication channel. So the main Matrix channel has like over 5,000 or even, I don't know, larger than that. And the second one is actually the Chinese Nix Matrix channel. In terms of demographic, I think, there's a lot of people from our end that are kind of between, various age groups that you can see kind of specific trend around that. And also in terms of what people identify as in terms of like what they do or, right? So it's like a lot of people identify as like Linux enthusiasts.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, we published that. We did an interesting report kind of showing the Linux community.
I think that would be interesting. Can I ask what the motivation for doing the survey was?
Yeah, so one of the things that we've been thinking about at the board level, right, is what is our position in the community? And part of that position is really just being the stewards of the community, empowering, supporting, and unblocking. And I think it was important for us to kind of for all of those building inside the community, because there are dozens, if not hundreds, of like insane projects from particle accelerators to developer environments. It was important for us as like the foundation to give back to the community information about like who is this community, what do they care about, what's painful to our community members, what's not, so more members will feel empowered to kind of build things that people care about.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah.
I think diversity is so important, one of the most important challenges for open source IT overall. I think a diverse community and a diverse company is producing better results, especially if you really want to have the whole world as customers, then you better have also the whole world as contributors and team members. That's super, super crazy important. For Nextcloud, because the company is growing out of the community, we are all quite distributed. So we have employees in 15 countries, really from all continents, basically. And I think this is very important. Obviously, there's still a lot to do. So there's still, the majority are still old white men, as I am. We have a dedicated diversity program where we bring people together. We have internships, for example, for people, and we fly them into our events. And it's really important, but yeah, there's a lot to do still.
Yeah. I mean, that's the impression I've got, and we have described the community as inclusive. And I've no doubt that they are welcoming, inclusive communities, but I agree with some of the challenges that you're mentioning there. Sorry, Franz, did you want to?
I totally agree what has been said. So I think as an organization who is in the open source community, you need to also represent this as a company And we have initiative circles, how we call them, where we basically invite everyone actually to contribute. And we are a fully remote company, so we don't have any offices. So basically, you need to have this very open and transparent communication and let everybody actually participate. Yeah. We have also consent decision processes, so we have very flat hierarchies, so everybody can actually bring in topics, we discuss them, and basically we say, okay, they are good enough to go, or otherwise, okay, we don't need to agree, all of us, we just say, okay, is it good to try, and then we actually do it. Yeah. And
so
this is what you need to represent also to your community, because then you also get the diversity in there.
Yeah.
I do want to add two things. So from the survey, one of the things that was very big was that because our contributors' size was so huge, a lot of people actually said, I don't have the confidence to contribute.
Yeah,
like I want to, but what happens if like my contribution is not good? Do I get marked? And we're trying to really look into that. The other thing is like, how do we open up the community to be, I don't know how correct this is to say it, but to empower the diverse folks from like women contributors and female contributors, because that is something that is very, very lacking. Like if you look at that survey and see like where we're established across, and something that we need to dig into, I think as general in open source and how...
I completely agree. I mean, it was great to have Amandine with me up here today, because if not, I would have been the only woman on this stage for quite some time. And, we do need to call that out and ask the community to help us address that, because as has been, a theme of this conference has been, the more diverse we are, then the better everything is going to be.
Right, and my worry is that there's like some mix of things that is happening in open source, like maybe in the past was in IT, but now open source is kind of on the edge of it, that we need to really figure out to actually make it diverse, but beyond the current ratio that we have today. And
I think your survey would be great, great to have that to feedback. Shall we go to some questions? Okay, so. Could you just say who you are? That's something that we didn't actually ask people to do, and I think it's nice to know if you can just say your name and where you're from.
My name is Rick Viergever. Is it working?
Yeah. It is now.
Sorry, my name is Rick Viergever. I'm from Rena. And my question is triggered by the surveys. I'm wondering if maybe some of you can just very briefly state like the top 3 ways in which you try to get information from your community of users rather than contributors about what they want from your product, so that you can make your product as user focused as you can possibly make it.
I'm happy to start off. So I think one is just work in the open. I love our community. They are extremely opinionated. Well, they'll find us. Like if we work in the open, they'll find us and they'll do it. But we post, like we use Discourse as a main channel. So it's like everything we post on there. Every library, right, based on what we feel are the needs of the community, we open source and then give like a talk about it and share as much information in docs so people can consume and be like, is this good, is this bad? Like we just released a Rust to Nix library that allows anyone to build on top of Nix with Rust, right? Why not? We use it for our CLI, why not do that for other places as well? 2, I think, it's just like asking people if they're willing to jump on a call with us and kind of what I call like a blind interview, where we're like, if you don't mind sharing your screen and just starting off, with flocks from zero and just speaking out loud, right? Use profanities, share your feelings, tell us like how fucking stupid our documentation is for like leading you down this path, because that's what we really kind of get value from, at least from our end.
Yeah, on our side, we also obviously rely a lot on our matrix rooms for each project, GitHub issues, a ton of GitHub issues. And some of our product team within Elements are actually running some user testing and user feedback sessions as well.
I think the important thing is that you provide different channels, because people have different preferences. I mean, in our case, we have a super active forum, GitHub issues, chat rooms, meetups. People have different preferences, and you should have lots of different channels.
One thing that we did actually, we donated the code to the CNCF, And in the process of doing that, we have a number of special interest groups and sort of various different organised groups through that we lead. And that's a very good way of connecting with not just the people that we know via the company community of Cert Manager, but also like into the CNCF. And that's really helped us to connect with people who represent the CNCF, but have a greater awareness of how our project is used in their community of users. So that's been quite a helpful thing for us, as well as all the other various different channels. We have a really active Slack channel. I think we've got like 4,000 or 5,000 people on it. We've obviously there's GitHub, and then we actually have a product marketing team that spend a lot, because we don't track our software obviously, but who spend a lot of time analysing GitHub users and stars and sort of contributions just to see who they are and what the makeup of that is. And we've also done a survey. We've not quite got 2,000 people responding, but we've got a good few hundred. And some people were willing to give their details, and that's given us a chance to follow up and then have those like one-on-one conversations.
Okay, great, thank you. I think I can see another question here, another question here, and another question here. Okay.
I have a question for Frank. So
can you say who you are, please?
Hi, I'm Mike Schwartz. I'm the founder of Glue. I'm the host of the Open Source Underdogs podcast. Frank's been a guest on the podcast quite a while back, and we met in Stuttgart. But I have a question about Nextcloud. Has a really active, enthusiastic community. How do you manage the product roadmap, and how do you balance sort of like what gets into the product, and what are sort of your development priorities in the product?
Great podcast, by the way. Everybody should subscribe to it. There's a lot of knowledge about open source in there. It's really good. Product roadmap. We actually had a discussion with our community lately about that. So Nextcloud is really developed by the community. Sure, we have 60 engineers that we pay from the company side to write software. And this is something where we have a process where we talk to our customers, just classic product management, look at what the competition is doing and so on, and we come up with some features that we should do from a company perspective. But there are tons of features which are developed by the community, and there is no roadmap for that. People just show up and do things, and there's no plan behind it. Actually, I think there cannot be a plan, should be no plan. I mean, you cannot tell the community what to do. That's not fun. I mean, as a community member, you don't want to have a boss who tells you what to do. It's all volunteers. So this just happens, I don't know, organically, magically. I don't know, in the last release, for example, we have a nice feature which shows like an org chart of your organization based on the LDAP attributes in there. It's just popped out of nothing, and it's a nice feature, and now it's there. And there was definitely no planning for that, and no roadmap, and nothing. It just popped up from a community side. From a company side, we work in a very classic way, where we check what does the customers expect, and we have some, I don't know, surveys in our customer base. But that's only the roadmap of the company, not of the project.
So just to go a little further, I mean, if the community develops something, then do you have to support it? Like maybe it's this org chart feature, you didn't develop it, you didn't think of it, but then if customers want it, do you end up supporting it? And do you ever sometimes have any friction about, well, maybe this wasn't such a good idea?
Yeah, that's a challenge we have sometimes, that our internal engineers say, yeah, okay, great feature, but now I have to support it. Thanks a lot for that. There are different ways to deal with it. I mean, it depends what it is. Sometimes we just fully adopt it and say, okay, that's great, we just put in resources to support it forever. If we have doubts, if this is a feature that is really that useful in the future, we can always outsource it into an app. It's like a plugin, basically. And then the plugin can be updated, but if the plugin is discontinued at some point, it's not so bad. Right? It's not in the core. So this is an option. Sometimes we also work together with the community. The community doesn't have to be individuals, by the way. Community can also be companies who are contributing something. And it's possible to do a deal with them. That we say, okay, you contribute this feature. Do you want to support it? In this case, we can give you some of our customers who want to have support for the feature. And they have their own little business now with supporting this feature in the Nextcloud core. So different ideas how to handle that.
Frank, do you have any of your community that actually create proprietary features on top of Nextcloud, or does it tend to be open source?
Yes, this is actually something that has started to happen lately. There are service providers who run Nextcloud for their customers, and they're developing a proprietary feature on top of it to basically be so that they're able to charge more money or differentiate to something else. This is actually something that we are still, I don't know, I'm not really sure yet what to think about that. On one hand, it creates exactly this open core model that, as I said earlier, I'm not a fan of it. On the other hand, then there are suddenly companies in the ecosystem around Nextcloud who can build up their own little business by developing their own little proprietary plugin. That's a good thing. I mean, this is ecosystem, that's good. So I don't really know yet. What are the other opinions about it? In metrics, does something like that happen too?
We haven't had proprietary features developed on top of it, I think. But in terms of managing roadmap, the hardest ones are contribution to the app element itself. Because for a user-facing app, you're trying to you put a lot of effort to make sure that the experience is good, and there are studies, and the product people are actually trying to figure out the flows, etc. And then suddenly you have contributions from the community, which come in the middle, like, that's not really aligned with what I was trying to do. What am I going to do with that? And that's really tricky to manage. On top of, yes, the maintenance behind it. But yeah, for the rest, it's we have our roadmap, and then the community may add stuff on top of it.
Any other comments? Okay, we'll go to the next question, please. Thank you.
Cool. So I think it's.
Can you remind us who you are, please?
I'm Matt. I'm trying to set something up at the moment. So there's clearly some blurred lines between the community and the company, although I guess legally there's quite a clear line. It's all a value exchange in one way or another. And I'm just wondering, it's a mutually beneficial relationship. I think someone spoke about how monetizing the community focuses resources, time and attention on the community, which benefits the community. I'm wondering whether the companies do anything specific other than kind of engaging with the communities to give back. I don't know what that could be. It could be running events. It could be like this one, I suppose, or anything else, or just, even money.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a green field, really. I think it's really depends on the company culture and who comprises of the company, right? So it's like for our end, we're either community members or community members pretty much inside the company. We hired from the community, and I'll be very transparent. At times, it might be that we're biased extremely towards just Nix, and we don't have external opinions of anything outside of Nix, but this is the company that we're building. So I think for us, it's right, I sit on the board last week. I spent about 5 hours going through the last 4 years of fiscal, financial, Nix Foundation budget, and trying to build a transparent roadmap that shows a P&L for the community so that we can create a funding form for a grant program that we're trying to spin up, right? Is that in some way contributing to Flux or something directly to a Flux? Hell no, right? But that's again the base ideology that we have, that we're trying to do our best to grow Nix and make Nix stronger, because our belief is that it doesn't matter what company you are or what you're trying to build on top of it. If folks can't get behind the open source, companies and individuals alike, it doesn't matter. So it's for us, the open source comes first, and Ryan here, Ryan and I ran NixCon, and we spent 3 months going crazy, right? So and then we ended up with an amazing event, 200 people talked just about Nix, and it was beautiful, right? So it's that's kind of, I don't think there's limitations. It's just what are you passionate about? What do you think is going to be the most impactful to the community, and do that.
Any other views?
I think it's important to have that they understand what the deal is between the community and the company. And I think it should be, in our case, it is their software that's freely available, that's open source. The company contributes, the community contributes, and then everybody's happy because the product gets better. I think this is sort of the deal that most open source contributors can relate to. you have to be careful with bringing in other factors into this deal, for example, money. I mean, we have travel support. If someone wants to come to our events, we sometimes help them with travel and hotels and stuff. But beyond that, you have to be quite careful. For example, we had one case like 10 years ago where someone was really super actively contributing a lot to the product and for no money, just because they want to have a better product themselves. And then we decided, hey, that's such an awesome person, maybe we should send them just a T-shirt as thank you. And then the person emailed back from the domain blah 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 at guy paid developer paid by a t-shirt.com.
Oh.
So actually giving them a present, giving them something back, basically turned the whole equation around and said like, okay, great, now I'm doing all this work and I only got a T-shirt. Come on, that's a joke.
Did you have that tagline on the T-shirt? Maybe that's actually.
So
good.
you have to be a bit careful with like paying community or giving them stuff.
For us, the grant program is also, to Frank's point, very about that. It's just like, you know, you want to meet up, you want some money to travel, you know, to come to an event and support it. So it's like that's what the grant. You want to like hack together. You want to do a sprint. We'll give you some food. Like we'll help you subsidize these efforts. So it's better and more available to anyone, right, across the world.
I just talking from my experience, I'd say that the vast majority of the times, I mean, because the open source community is so welcoming, friendly, nice, it's actually been the community thanking me for sort of creating the project, because it saved them so much time, so much energy. It's like it saved them so much just hassle across the organization. But I think it is important to remember that you're only successful in a lot of ways because of that community. And this is at a time when we were bootstrapped. I had no money, so it doesn't have to maybe be monetarily or even big gestures or conferences or anything like that. What we did is we just found our top contributors and sent them a letter with an official contributor seal, signed by cert manager saying thank you for your contribution, and that went down so well, and it cost us virtually nothing, but it just showed that we really did appreciate and thank our community for sort of contributing to the project and making what it was. So that was just a little sort of memory that you just triggered by asking that question.
Awesome. Franz, you said you got to be careful with how you set it out. Is there a documented, not necessarily like a contract or anything, but is there anything that you've made that makes it clear kind of the stance, or is it just done as this kind of more natural thing? Because you mentioned, having it clear what is what the company does.
I don't think we have any. I'm not aware of any documentation, but it's basically as just said. People should get the credits. You should be thankful. Maybe on your website, on GitHub, I give them respect, credits, not necessarily money in my perspective. Because
so yesterday, there was a security issue. I don't know if anyone was following that. Martin from the community was faster to update Nix packages than the security community was able to get something out. Mm-hmm. So that was an obvious holy shit, Martin, look at this. It's a community member just doing something awesome and just calling that out, because there's just amazing people, right? It's like damn.
I think those non-monetization, I think that's key. People aim to improve things, and for them it's basically enough if they get recognized. So be the community member of the month or be the community member of the year. Those things really mean something to someone, because you honor them in your community, and that works definitely better and motivates them.
Okay. Yeah, we tend to recognize as well, when there is specific contributions or things like this. For example, when we do our Matrix Live or This Week in Matrix, etc., we make sure we call out the people namely so that they feel the recognition as well.
Okay, thank you. I think we had another question here.
There it is.
Oh, there. Okay, sorry. I thought we did. I thought we had one there too.
Sorry.
Yeah. Of course, this gentleman first. Here you go.
Okay, thank you. Gaël Duval, I'm the CEO of Marina. Have you ever considered using crypto tokens to structure your communities, like giving some rewards or giving some powers to the best contributors or something like this?
So this is actually, I have very strong opinion on this, but I'm actually really interested, especially Frank, I'm learning a lot from the left here. It's like, in my perspective, is that once you start some sort of mechanism that like either financially or like whatever it is, like rewards, contributions, you're starting to create a mix of incentive. Right, so where we started about like why a community, right? It's like passionate people because this is something that I love and I need and I'm just doing it. Now that you're mixing in something extra, right, it gives opportunity for that clash of incentives. If I can give an example, it's like, oh, if I'm getting something for my contributions, companies or people that are more privileged can come in and do more of that rather than keeping the community diverse and open. So that's like, for me, that's like big. Try to refrain from that as much as possible.
Completely agreed.
So I got something.
The same for us. So we've seen bug bounties which have been set up by customers, for example, like the French government-sponsored bug bounty on Matrix. And we also had bug bounties made with tokens. So Status.im, they invested in Element for seed, and then they set up a bug bounty. And then suddenly it was the crypto bubble. And then you had like a $200 bounty for a simple fix, which became $50,000. And it was such a mess. So we try to stay away of these sort of things.
Nothing to add here.
Yeah,
So,
I've never considered it. And I think for the reasons said, I probably wouldn't. Yeah.
Okay, I think you've got your answer.
I'm kind of interested where the question comes from, though. Are you someone who's experimented with this, or have you done it yourself?
We have considered this, but we haven't done this because when we asked to our community, there was a strong rejection for it.
Yeah.
I think, by the way, like one of the way I view it is that this is what's nice about having, like, also companies that are, you know, have capital either by bootstrapping or by backing. It's like, if there's a job opening, right, for the folks on Flux, it's like if you want to work on Nix and be compensated for it, it's like you can apply and join us. Yeah. But in the community, it has to stay very pure.
That's an interesting way of looking at it.
Right? It has to, and there's other companies, obviously not just Flux. There's like a bunch of companies now. It's just going to be more companies, and there's companies like that are incorporating Nix into their flow. But like for us, the community is needs to stay open and inclusive.
Okay, thank you. I think we do have another question here. Thank you.
Yeah. Test.
It's it, yeah.
Tom, I build things and break things over at Flux.
An example of a 10-year community member.
Would you take crypto for contributions?
Oh my! This is.
I agree with the whole weird incentives issue. But interestingly, though, we mentioned community quite often. But what actually is it? How do you define it? Because when you start trying to figure out like how a community makes decisions, you know, governance and teams and structures, now the question is, well, what is it? Is it just by anyone who happens to have ever been a contributor? Does everyone have an equal voice? Right? These are problems that you really quickly run into of how do you define what this thing is. And so how do you address that? Because you end up with these really odd situations if you try to say, hey, everyone has a voice. Does everyone have an equal voice? Now what do you do? Things can very quickly either become unfair or dictatorial. What happens now?
On our side, so when we started, the whole idea of Matrix has been building on our experience and what we had seen on other communication projects and protocols out there. And we had seen failure modes like, for example, XMPP, where you had a company leading it. It got acquired by Cisco. Cisco did nothing with it, and the community took over the project. And in our view, our perception, especially from using it, was that it meant that there was no lead, no head, and it was a bit going all over the place. So when we started Matrix, we thought that, at least at the beginning, we really had to be a kind of benevolent leader. Like, we had to make sure we were pushing and making the decisions because we needed to build strong foundations. So, so at that point, I would say like the community was providing feedback and this sort of things, and the spec for Matrix has always been open. But it was only 4 years in that we actually set up the proper foundation with the proper governance, saying that anyone can submit a change to the spec, but then it will have to be reviewed by the spec core team, who will then validate. But you have a proper time where the entire community can feedback on it to refine the change and make sure it maps the kind of mission of Matrix. So this has been put in place. But yeah, it was like 4 years in. And now what we're doing is at the foundation level, we're putting in place memberships, which will, and we will also build a board, a governing board, where you will have a mix of community members who are donating to the foundation, as well as companies who are building on top of Matrix and are donating to the foundation, and basically trying to provide a voice from everyone, including the guardians, including the spec core team, so that it drives the foundation into one direction and have something a bit more separate from Element, who so far has still been the main contributors and the main leader on the project, even if we listen to the community and we have inputs from them.
Yeah, I think at JetStack we learned a lot actually about some of the failures of earlier communities that went before us. The ones that I looked to was OpenStack. I'm sure at Morantis you might have an opinion on that, but it became very fragmented. It was very much driven by commercial interests, and it became a little bit of a mess. Although the technology itself was great, and it had a lot of traction in enterprise clients. So what we did was I'm very thankful for a number of members of our team. James Munley is one of them, who actually helped us to create Cert Manager off the back of an earlier project, which was automating Let's Encrypt, who was effectively mirroring all of the best practice from the CNCF and Linux Foundation before I'd even thought about it. So actually our project was set up with all of the code of conducts and the approaches in mind. And we technically owned the project up until the end of 2020, and we decided to then donate it to the CNCF to try and help us to make sure that it was governed in the right way. Clearly, that some people might say the CNCF is not the perfect way of doing it, but for us that was the way that we thought would at least reach a baseline on us being able to sort of properly govern and manage it. But there are probably other. I mean, it's changing, and the whole concept of what a good community is kind of evolving and changing all the time. So I think people just need to be open-minded as to where it's going, and maybe just try and look at new ways of making it better.
For us at Nix, I'll say just shortly, it's like we have the board. We really define, as I said earlier, that we're only here to be like the stewards, the unblockers. And then, for instance, we started like trying to empower more teams to be diverse, remove the bus factors, kind of encourage more people to be part of those decision-making teams. So it's like the Nix team, the infra team, like, and giving them a charter and helping them establish it, and also just helping them make it transparent so other community members know what they're about. So if there's a relevancy, they can join, right? Because sometimes, again, it's like that contribution issue. It's like I don't have the confidence. Like this infra team, it's people who've been here for 10 years.
Yeah.
I'm only here for a year. How can we help them join that? So that's like quickly what we've been doing. But again, lots to learn.
I think I agree with everything that's said already. Two more aspects to it. I'm a big fan of, I think, what Linus Torvalds once said about who codes decides. So I think if you want to change something at Nextcloud, then if you create a pull request, then that's the right way to change something, basically to contribute. We don't have a forum where we have like votings where people then tell other people what to do. I think this doesn't really work in a community. You really have to contribute to change something. And the other aspect I want to mention is, I don't think we want to start a discussion about software licenses here now. We are crushing this panel here, but picking the right software license is important, because I think this might be one of the mistakes with OpenStack, that it just enabled too many commercial forks around it, and this didn't really hold the whole thing together. And having something like the GPL or the HGPL or licenses like that, they help to keep the whole contributions open. That's another aspect.
I fully agree. So I think building the community, it's all about the contribution. This is how we see it as well. Who contributes, the ones who contribute really define the roadmap of the project and what gets implemented. You need to make sure as running or being part of it that you have a very low entry barrier. I think this is also very important where we come back, okay, do I really feel safe enough actually to contribute? And there are different levels that we have heard before. It's not only the coder, but you can contribute in setting up a meetup or going somewhere and spreading actually the good news about the projects and what we are trying to enable. So there are different ways, and you need to facilitate this in a very, very easy way.
Okay, thank you. I think we had another question here. Oh, sorry, there and there. Okay.
Thank you. So we've been talking a lot about, actually you've been talking a lot about the positive aspects of community. My question is, are there also negative aspects that you've noticed over the years? And perhaps particularly, I'm curious, do any of you have any haters? And if so, how do you deal with them? Are there any specific approaches that you take to handle that?
Happy to start as well. Yes. I mean, it's you're right. It's the pros and the cons. It's like it's a lot of people, it's a lot of amazing people. It's usually also a lot of really smart people, and that comes with opinions. That comes with prior kind of like feelings or beliefs around like how things should be and what is right and what is wrong, and that obviously creates conflict. I think like if I was building a proprietary company. Right, and I was just closed source completely. Like I said earlier, I wouldn't have spent like 5 hours on Nix budgeting last week, or we would have spent like 2 months running NixCon or something like and doing those things. But and yeah, I mean factually, you're putting resources and efforts where a closed company is putting those resources and time and efforts directly into monetization. And here it's not into monetization. So like I can also share like from the investor perspective, right? Like if you also bring in, unlike the bootstrap, but if you bring in the wrong investors, they're going to put a lot of pressure on the company to not be true open source. So I'm lucky to have like investors that believe in my crazy philosophy, but that's one, right? So there's a huge resource allocation that you're putting in something that is not necessarily quantifiable into a direct monetization metric. It's not like 10 hours I put in here, I get $1. No. The other question around like haters or conflicts, like, and in general about the community, there's a lot of drama, right? A lot of people really, again, as the board or as like the people that are trying to like keep things alive and healthy, a lot of times really your job is like to connect between people and be a firefighter, right? Just like shut it down and make everyone happy. So we've just had like a few issues like that where as a company, right, I switched hats and I moved to my Nix hat and I was sitting for hours just like facilitating between parties inside of Nix to just like make everyone happy and make the project continue because that's what we're going for. But it's a very obvious differentiation between open source company and non-open source company, at least from my perspective.
I'm trying to think of negatives and I'm finding it hard. I genuinely believe that the community is, I mean, my company is a reflection of the success and passion and commitment of the community. Other than a couple of problem actors that we talked about earlier on, that maybe have caused a couple of issues that we've had to deal with, and hopefully we've dealt with them by relying on a code of conduct that we had very early on in the project that really helped. But we have had haters and we've had people who thought that we were doing things in the wrong way. But the beauty of the project is that you can go and fork it or create a different version or try and do it a different way. And we saw that many times over the years that we were building out the project. And some of them failed, some of them were successful to some extent, but we continued, we did what we did, and really it's up to them as to whether they want to be involved and engage, and if they don't, then they have the choice to not use it or not be involved. So I'd say I find it hard. I'm a massive believer and genuinely feel like it's a big part of a company, and I feel like I would definitely encourage everyone who is starting an open source company to develop your community as strongly as you can.
Yeah, basically, I think it's definitely additional things to deal with, additional things to think about, and more complications. But compared to the benefits of it and the human adventure, I mean, you're just part of something bigger. It's not just, I've built my own small company. I may have flipped it for $1 billion, but like you just built a company, and like here it's just like big wave. So I think it's and the haters, yes, of course, we had like death threats, these sort of things. It's always, but it's fine.
80% of them are fake.
Yeah.
But
Is there security in the room somewhere? Personal protection.
But I think I think it's a good opportunity to talk about the fork side. I don't know if you were going to bring it up, but I think it's an interesting topic to discuss.
Yeah, well, I mean, it depends on time, really, and what we do. And if, Frans, you have any...
There's only one last thing on the haters. So usually, if you build an awesome community, usually the community shuts down the haters very quickly. So you don't have to step in. Yes, you need to step in when it's really when it's escalating, then you need to be to the point. But usually it's very self-regulated.
Exactly. It's like when you've built an unhealthy community, which I have seen earlier days in the Linux community sometimes, they were somewhat unhealthy, then you can see real drama. Whereas it almost acts like an immune system in my head where they're kind of they're weeding out those bad actors by themselves.
So before we go to the discussion about forking, I think we will take this last question here and then we'll come back to you.
Yeah, sorry, if I may, I just wanted to make a quick comment about tokenization. There's 4 million open source packages just in like the JavaScript, Java, Ruby, Python repositories, not including all the Linux packages. And there's only a couple of you founders up there. So I think what I would say is that the existential problem of open source is funding. And so what I think we need to think about is, does tokenization offer any new possibilities for funding? And because this is such an existential threat, I think we actually need to look at that and research it. And actually, Glue has put in for an NSF grant to research this area. The problem is there's so much crypto Web3 bullshit, it's hard to get the signal to noise. But I think that because this is such an existential challenge, it's worth, even if it's a long shot, it's worth looking at that long shot and see if there are some tools in there that might enable new types of ecosystems and new ways to reduce exploitation of open source developers. And it's one of the reasons we've been focusing on the podcast on trying to interview Web3, people who are using Web3 and open source together. So
that's one of my learnings, is I'm going to research that topic, and just because off the back of the question, I've honestly never thought about it. So I feel like it's something that I want to look at and know more about myself. I think just from my personal experience, a lot of the open source contributors and developers just kind of write off Web 3.0. Well, some of them invested and done very well off Bitcoin and so on, but that sort of whole movement of Web 3.0. But yeah, I think we should be open-minded at least and sort of explore the opportunities.
Okay, we don't have a lot of time left, but let's go to your point about
I want to hear from Frank on the forking, because I think you have a good experience on that, so I think he can probably have interesting insight. I have a view about it, so...
There are so many aspects to it. I mean, one thing that was mentioned earlier is that the opportunity to fork it keeps you honest, because, I don't know, we have, for example, as the Nextcloud company, we are running the project in a way that we own the trademark and we have the download server with the releases, so we sort of decide what's in the release de facto. Of course, the development, as I said earlier, is like completely open. Everybody can contribute any feature they want without the approval of the company, but there are some things that the company controls, like name and the official release and stuff like that. Which is then, of course, the question, do we have the right to do that? I mean, and what if we are doing a bad job? Do we ruining the whole project by doing the wrong decisions in these areas? And then there's option with forking is an interesting one, because everybody who thinks they can do a better job can just fork it and run it in parallel. And if their version of it is more successful than our version, well, then it will be successful, and Nextcloud version will go down. So I think this is an interesting dynamic that also helps to create better products than proprietary ones.
Yeah.
I think it raises the bar. I see it a bit as a natural selection process, basically, and if people are unhappy, they try, if it works or it doesn't work. Sometimes it's just a question of ego, and it may spin up anyway, but, well, if it's just an ego thing, then it's probably not going to go very far.
All right, guys, I think that's us reached our allotted time. Really interesting discussion, and I think we've explored community from lots of different perspectives. Can I ask you to join me in thanking our panel? And thank all of you for being so engaged as well. I believe that a light lunch will shortly be served. It might be out there just now, so please go and nourish and replenish yourselves. And if you're coming back into this room, you'll see Matt and I again.
Thank you.
So, thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Thanks very much,
That was
guys.
really
That was
good.
super.
Thanks.
Thank you.